It's about to start, we'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti. Let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is to continue this little guy, this lovely little component that is the first effect we are actually finishing, probably, hopefully, using our library. That is a work in progress since last October, I think. We spent a lot of time finding the best way to develop JS effects, and I think we are finding it. So in case you're new here, we are developing a library to help you do real-time audio effects in Reaper. We are focusing on the visualization aspect of things, and in particular, in this case, we are looking at the waveforms generated by some audio signal. The intent in the future is that we'll have something like a compressor that will show you what it's doing to the waveform. So far, I'm working on this little helper effect that you put in the mixer control panel in Reaper, and it will show you the waveform as it's scrolling across. So useful, perhaps if you have some sort of compressor going on, you could put one of these before and after. I don't know, it's up to you how you're going to use this. And we have a couple features going on already. You can see however many channels you have, and they scroll across just like that. They show up like this here on the mixer control panel. And there is something that I love about the mixer control panel, the frame rate. When you see the effect here, it's running at 30 frames per second, so it's not super smooth. But when it's running here on the main user interface of Reaper, it's running at the same refresh rate as the rest of the interface, 60 frames per second. So it looks so nice, so smooth. It scrolls along perfectly. We can also change the duration, which will make the thing move faster, but you'll see more detail. We can take the square root of the measurements, which helps, I guess, in this kind of signal that is sort of low level, because there is more space to the quiet parts of the signal. You can also do it vertically if you want. And then it looks like that, which I guess kind of looks cool in the mixer control panel because it sort of looks like your waveform is coming from here and jumping into the next effect down the chain. And you can turn off the grid, which right now is kind of just a hack. And then let's look at the things that we want to do today, which is this list that we have been building up over the course of the development. In fact, there is something that comes to mind right now, so I will take note. Adjust the grid size. Because right now, when you turn on the grid, the size doesn't really make a lot of sense, and perhaps even the colors don't make a lot of sense. So we do have some more tweaking to do. Right, let's get down to business. Perhaps we'll even get down to business in the order of these bullet points, at least to begin with. If we find one that is too hard, we may jump. We may jump ahead to the next one. Right, so the first is disabling the grid more properly. And right now, if you turn off the grid, then we pass undefined as the argument for the grid color and opacity. or not for the grid color and opacity, for the grid size, okay? And it so happens that undefined is a value that comes with the library, by the way, and it's a large value, it's a big number. So we are just saying that the gap would be too big. What we want instead is to actually check if the value is undefined, do something special, namely don't draw. So let's find here in the implementation of the waveform component in the library, the place where we draw the grid. It will be under the draw function, and it will be one of the first things in the draw function. It will be this part. And there is a while loop here, a while loop there. The first while loop is to draw the main axis. The second is to draw the cross axis. The main axis, let's think about the horizontal case because it's simpler to conceptualize, at least it is for me. The main axis is the horizontal axis in this case. That is the axis where the scrolling is happening. And this axis is time. So this is going to be drawing time. And that makes sense if you look at the labels. They are going to be based on time. So what we want is to check if the main width, the main gap is undefined. If the main gap is undefined, just jump over this while loop. Jump over the whole block, perhaps. So we set the color and the alpha, and this is where we would start the logic for drawing the main axis. So if the main gap is undefined, well, I guess if it's different from undefined, then do all of this. In other words, draw the main axis, the grid on the main axis. Similarly, we check the cross gap. And if it's not undefined, then do this whole block that will draw the other axis. The cross axis, in the case of the horizontal waveform, is this, the vertical axis, and that's the dB values. Okay, let's review these changes, and visually we will not see anything because, as I said, by accident, the undefined value is a large value which makes this work anyway. So we'll not see any changes. But we know that now we are checking for undefined. So the code looks okay. Let's just make sure that it still works. Okay, so the grid is on and we can see one of the grid lines here. And if we turn it off, then everything is still working, but the grid line is gone. Hello, Will. It's going well. I hope you're feeling better today. Let me know how things are going. And also, what do you think about this component? How do you like it? Do you think that I should be doing something differently? Oh, I see something different that I should be doing. everything is off by 1. The whole drawing is off by 1. Okay, I will take note of this, but other than that, what ideas do you have for the waveform component? Or for this little effect in general? Drawing is off by 1 to the right. I wonder what happens if I turn on the vertical mode. Is it off? Oh, check this out. It's not off by 1. Perhaps it is off to the right again. To test that, we can put a... My voice is not going to get so loud, so we can put a tone generator before the waveform display, and then we get this solid block. I'll turn off my microphone here, so we could just get this solid block. And if I make this 0 dB, then we should see the thing covering the block here, and it seems to be slightly bigger. That was the impression I got. Let's go down and do this again and watch this closely. Yeah, we can see that it's 1 pixel too large, and doing this little experiment is kind of interesting because we can see the desynchronization of the two waveforms as they scroll across. I think it's okay. I'm not going to touch that again. We could have some sort of external clock to sync the two waveforms, but it's okay. This little glitch that happens here is not too noticeable when you have the two waveforms going, and it's definitely not noticeable when you are on the MCP. The intent of the effect is to be on the MCP, so I'll not worry about this too much. So yeah, in horizontal mode, drawing is off by 1 to the right in horizontal mode, and 1 pixel too large in vertical mode. Oh, good to read. I'm happy that you're feeling better. I'm working on the formula for tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow we have the C++ digital signal processing JUICE study group, and Bo will be sharing with us his progress in learning C++, and we'll do something that is in JUICE. So we'll be working on code together, I think. But yeah, I think it's going to be based on some idea, probably for a compressor, knowing Bo. It's probably for a compressor, and he's working on the formula for that, I think. Right, so disabling the grid on undefined, we did. That's in the bag. Now drawing the grid on top of and not below the waveform. So let's get the waveform on the screen again. And perhaps we'll turn on the square root mode and turn on my voice. And the issue is that you don't see the grid below the waveform. And I kind of like this, but I kind of don't like it, particularly when you look at the dB scale. Oh, it's actually a filter? Okay. If you want to save all of this for tomorrow, then yeah, sure. But otherwise, you can tell us all about it, because I'm always interested. Yeah, particularly on the dB scale, I think it makes sense to draw on top of the waveform, not below. And as long as you do that transparently, you do some transparency on the grid, then it should be fine. So let's do the following. On the library side, we take the whole grid drawing section. which starts here and continues down there. Just take this whole section that draws the grid, cut, find the place where we stop drawing the main waveform component, which happens to be here. So you can see that the drawing of the main waveform is much shorter, much simpler than the drawing of the grid. And then just paste this here. So now the order of drawing is respected. Whatever you draw first will be below what you draw later. So now you're drawing the grid on top of the waveform. Let's see this in action. Right, so again, I'll have to say something for it to scroll across, and then we can see the grid. And yeah, I think that this makes more sense. But now, I think I will want to tweak the colors and transparency and whatnot. Tail is here. Hello, Tail. How are you doing? I hope that you like this component. Suppose this is the first time you're seeing the whole thing kind of working more or less for the first time. Even with multiple waveforms, it is working. We do have a grid and everything. It's sort of small here, but the intent of this effect, which is going to be the first user of this, is to be on the mixer control panel, or in this case, the track control panel. So it can look like this, which I think looks just beautiful. Hope you're liking it too. Right, so we are drawing the grid on top of the waveform now. But I'm not completely happy with the choice of colors and everything. So perhaps let's address that now. I think that what I'm going to do is, on this view where you're setting things up, I will make things darker. So the background will be 900, and this will be 800. Now this is gonna boil down to design work, okay? So I'll just be tweaking colors until I find something I like. And perhaps instead of trying to draw a different background, I would just draw a rectangle. Is there a way in JS Effects to draw a rectangle that is not filled in? I guess you draw a rectangle with rounded corners, but the radius is 0. I think that does it. So if I set the color, and then in that case I can set the color to the same color as the text perhaps, or maybe just slightly darker than that, then these coordinates will work. And the radius can be none. There you go. That's a quick hack to draw a rectangle without a fill. but without rounded corners too, because when the thing is showing up here on the mixer control panel, which I think is the main use case for this, the track control panel is nice, but the mixer control panel, for me at least, is where it's at. So here it will be without rounded corners, because REAPER doesn't have a lot of rounded corners on the interface. So no rounded corners on this preview either. Yeah, sure. It's a regular 6 dB per octave infinite impulse response filter with a memory tail. The point is to make a smoother tape like EQ curve. Oh, smoother tape like EQ curve. Interesting. I tried a bit in JSFX, it seems to work. Awesome. Looking forward to looking at it tomorrow. Yeah, the waveform looks very nice. Great. Hey, that's a nice shortcut for drawing an empty rectangle. Yeah, the kind of thing that you find when you're thinking on your feet. All right, so that much I like. Then the text being on this color, I think it works fine. But I think that this needs to be on a darker color but more transparent, because I don't really love the way that you can see the grid so much on top of the waveform. And right now I think it is relatively light but relatively opaque. Yeah, so let's get down to that. We need to change this to be parameterizable. That's something that we have on the list of things to do. But I'll not get to that now. Then these values we need to tweak. And I don't think I will give this as an option to the user. You know what? Maybe I will. Yeah, I will. Give user the choice of grid gaps. Actually, not just one gap, because there is the horizontal and the vertical, or main and cross. And then this color is the color of the grid, which I guess I am going to give the option to change that to the user as well. But first, let's find one that works well, and then we can just perhaps change this. And I don't think I want to give the user just RGB, if you know what I mean, just let the user choose any color. I'll let the user choose between a pre-selection of colors that work well. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 200 because it's the same as the text. I'm going to change this to 200 as well, which may be surprising, but what I'm going to do is take the opacity all the way down so it is faint. So perhaps I will do like 20%. Yeah, that's more like it. Let's see when the waveform gets there. So you can actually barely see. Perhaps it is too transparent. Yeah, let's try something that is less transparent. I'll go to 30%. Okay, let's give this a try. Yeah, maybe it's because it's white on white, it's kind of hard to see. But I think we are making progress. Let's skip this one, because it's gonna be an off by one mistake in the coordinates somewhere. And in fact, now that I draw this rectangle to delineate the preview area, you cannot even see the mistake anymore. If you pay close attention here, you'll be able to see that it's drawing on top of the white rectangle, but don't pay close attention to that. And okay, this one is a big one. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So I'll prioritize this. Let's give the user the choice of grid gaps first, because it is supposed to be simpler. And also let's take the chance to revisit all the sliders, and in particular their ranges, to see if they make sense. So let's drop the effect on the track one more time. And this, I think, is not controversial, and it is behaving correctly. Okay, so all is just going to be however many channels you have on the track. And then if you want to have a set number, for instance, by default, it's mono, which I think makes a lot of sense because most sources are mono. Most sources that I think people will care about when they look at the waveform are mono. I don't know, just guessing, but the point is that you're going to be storing this as an effects string anyway, so whatever. So this is not too controversial, I don't think. By default, it's just showing one waveform. Then the duration. Is this a duration that can be useful? I think so. Let's look at this on the MCP. Yeah, I think that this duration can be useful. Let's turn on square root to make this more prominent. And yeah, I think that this can be useful, but I think it's at the minimum that will be useful. So let's try 150 to see if that perhaps is useful. And perhaps. But 50 will not be useful. Oh, maybe it is useful because you can sort of see the like a wavetable situation. You can sort of see the wave. That's so cool, actually. Yeah. If you're doing something like a synthesizer or something, this can be useful. 1 millisecond, can that be useful? Oh, it breaks. 10 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds is okay. 50 milliseconds is okay. 10 milliseconds is okay. 5 milliseconds is okay. 1 millisecond breaks. 2 milliseconds breaks. 5 milliseconds doesn't get us back. 100 milliseconds gets us back. That is so weird. 5 milliseconds is probably the bare minimum that we can do, because below that it will start breaking. In fact, this is starting to break already. So let's see if instead of voice I have like a tone generator, because I'm thinking of being able to see the waveform on a synthesizer. Yeah, this is starting to break apart. You can sort of start seeing the gaps in my drawing. So 10 is okay. Yeah, I'll let you get down to 5 milliseconds. Being very generous. How about the upper range? This bit. Okay, so this is 10 seconds worth of audio. And I think that this is reasonable. I think that more than this, more than 10 seconds would be too much. So sounds good. And then the step cannot be 100 milliseconds. I'll let the step be 1 millisecond. Which may be annoying to use, actually. Yeah, it's difficult to get the right value because the step is so small. But I guess I will take a step of 5 milliseconds. And you can always type in the value if you want. But yeah, this is like almost like a display of a waveform on a synthesizer, and this is almost like a subset of the arrangement view. It's like a little preview of the arrangement view. So I think that this is a good range. Then square root, off or on, orientation, horizontal or vertical, and grid on and off. That's not controversial. Let's do colors. And let me think about where I want to put this. So channels, duration, square root, orientation. I think those should be a section. Then I think that there should be a gap and then they start of another section. And then there should be a gap and they start of another section. So this is going to be about the colors of the main waveform. Yeah. And how do we call that? I think we call fill color. Yeah, fill color and opacity. I will not give you the option of opacity. I'll just give you the option of fill. Or should I give you opacity? Because I will give you opacity as well. And this will start at 0, like that. And I guess I will call this the waveform color and the waveform opacity. Hello, Fatis. Great to see you here. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow on the study group meeting. How are things going with you? Now for the color, let's get a hold of all the colors in the design system real quick. Black and white won't be too useful. And then let's get a hold of all these colors on a new buffer and find, I guess we can do something like this. We can put a cursor at dot 100. Yeah, that's gonna work. So I can put my cursor, my multiple cursors here and do the magic. How I like multiple cursors. So useful. So these are just grays. So I'll have something like gray. And I will capitalize all these guys, comma, delete the new line, join everything, and here we have a list of colors. Then for the opacity, I don't think I'm going to give you all the options. I am going to give you, let's see what could make sense for the waveform. You know what, in this context, because we are not drawing the waveform on top of any other user interface, the waveform opacity doesn't really make a lot of sense, so I'll not have it. I take it back. There you go. So this is the color of the fill. Then we skip a slider. We go to slider 8 to turn the grid on or off. Then we will have a slider 9 for the grid main gap and grid cross gap. And then we'll have a color and opacity for the grid. That one I am more confident about. So grid color. I don't need to say grid color because it's already the grid section. So grid color and opacity. And for this one, I think I will give you right now we are working with 30%. But I think I will give you 20%. Yeah, I'll give you 20%. I'll give you 30%. I'll give you 50%. I'll give you 75% probably. And I will give you 100%. Just like that. Also, on the slider section, I will turn off these sliders in case the grid is off. I'll get to that in a moment. First, I have to give this their parameters. And this will be the duration gap in pixels. And this is the volume gap in pixels. And now I'm thinking that perhaps instead of using the nomenclature that we borrowed from Flexbox in CSS, which is main and cross, perhaps we should just call this duration and volume axis. It would simplify the code, I guess, because reading main and cross and having to think about what is what gets complicated. So yeah. Let's leave a note here to rename main cross to... I don't really like the word volume here in this context. Level, gain, it's definitely not gain. I don't know what to call it. So I guess I would just say duration volume for now. Okay, bunch of options, kind of intimidating, but now, okay, now let's show and hide these sliders. So we'll have a slider show off all of those guys if grid is on. So I just have to say if grid, and that means that I have to cut this, paste there, cut this, paste there. And that should do it. Let's check. Okay, when the grid is on, you see all the sliders. When the grid is off, you don't see them. Great. Oh, good. I studied more papers on synthesis, and I'll show you all the results tomorrow. Yeah, that's interesting. Using FFTs to align the phase of stuff, that will be interesting. I guess it makes sense, right? Because you use an FFT to measure the phase, and you can use that information to phase align synthesis and sampling. Okay, I am giving the user these choices, but I still have to wire them in because the sliders are not really doing anything. So this slider is really just, yeah, it's being used the right way. It's just to turn the rest of the sliders on and off, and to turn the drawing, the drawing of the grid on and off, and that's happening. So now we can come here and change this, go there, and change that. Then for the grid color, it will get a bit complicated. Oh, and I skipped one, the fill color, which is the same, so it will get a bit complicated. Let's do the fill color. The color of the fill right now is this guy. What I will have to do is check if the fill color is equal to 0, then I want gray. So I want this. Otherwise, and then I guess I would just copy this line over and over a bunch of times. Or perhaps not. I guess I will do it like this. So I have all these options. Lowercase them. Copy this part. Paste here. Copy this part. Paste there. Change the last one. And then remove this one. I wish, and perhaps there is, a trick to do this that I'm doing right now, which is to replace on a column like I'm doing here, but in a way that is aware of incrementing the numbers. That I don't know how to do in Visual Studio Code, but there should be a way. There probably is a way, perhaps with an extension. But anyway, so now this is going to give me the fill color. And I will do a similar bit over there for the grid color. And I'm actually okay with having this copy and paste here because it is a coincidence that this is 200 and that's 200. Could not be. Perhaps it won't be for too long. So yeah, I prefer it this way. So we did the colors. Now let's do the grid opacity and test all of this. In particular, I am interested in defining the ranges of the gaps. I want them to be sensible ranges. All right, so this is gray and this is red, and oh, that's the color of the grid, but my grid is not showing. Okay, I'll get to that in a moment. This is red. This is orange. It looks kind of like yellow. This is amber. This is yellow. This is lime. I am fine with this. Should I have one for the background as well? Nah. And is 200 too light? Perhaps it is too light. We'll try 400 or 500. Oh, the grid opacity is wrong. The grid opacity is wrong. The grid opacity should be based on the options as well. The grid opacity is 0, then I will want an opacity of that percentage. I'm putting new lines here because it gets a bit tricky to see where one ends and the next starts. I don't think there needs to be a new line between those two, but between the ones that do case analysis, I think we should have new lines there. So then let's just do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's commit what we have because I'm going to start playing around with these 200s. We'll try 500s. Yeah, I saw your post about FFTs. I read the snippets that you showed in the Discord channel. And if you're watching this and you're not in the Discord channel, perhaps you would like to be. So go to my website, which is linked below here in the description. There you will find a link to be invited. So you can invite yourself, really. But yeah, if you go to my website, you can sort of invite yourself to the Discord server where you'll find most of the regulars on the channel, and we geek out about audio stuff. So that's a lot of fun. Oh, okay. The grid size that we have by default is not good. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's focus on the colors. In fact, let's turn off the grid. So yeah, the colors are now more prominent. They're jumping off the page better. I'm scrolling across all of them just to check. And perhaps you will have some sort of I am recommending that you use this as an effects chain and then just drop it on every track, but perhaps you will have track templates for different things like drums, bass, voice, and so forth. And on each one, on each track template, you have a different color if you're feeling fancy. All right, and this is drawing on top of the box. That does not make me happy. And in fact, it seems to be not enough by one. We are not drawing one to the right. We're just drawing one bigger than we should. That's so annoying. But all right, so let's turn on the grid again and try to find sensible values for this. Let's start with this axis. The value of 60 seems to make sense. Or is it 55? No. It's not 60. And it's not 55. In fact, the value seems to be 58. I'll take it. So on the main axis, the default value will be 58. Then let's see what the minimum should be. I guess perhaps the minimum should be 58. Because if I go below that, it starts drawing on top of one another. So yeah, the minimum will be 58. Now 58, what a shitty minimum. What a shitty value. But anyway, and then for the maximum, I guess 100 perhaps could work. Or maybe let's do... Let's do 96. Oh well. Now for the other axis. Well, we do have a problem where the dB is being drawn on top of the seconds. I don't think there is a lot we can do about this though. I think that the default will just be 48. Yeah, the default will be 48. Oh, I'm doing all these measurements on this little box, which is not exactly the same size as that one. I should be doing the measurements on that one. Hang on, I'm getting 3 seconds here? That doesn't make sense. I'm getting 2.5 seconds there. Why would that be? The gap has a certain size in pixels. Oh, the width of the component is going to affect that. Oh, yikes. Okay, I'll take it. So perhaps it will be a round value like 50. Let's see. Nope, it won't. But perhaps 48 will work. Yeah. And I guess I would just take out some of the spacing between the letters and then this will fit. So let's try that. I have here the letter spacing widest. I would change that to normal. Okay. Oh, now the values are different because I changed that? No, that cannot be. What is happening? I think it should be 48. Yes, 48 should be the default. And it doesn't work if it's 50, does it? No, it has to be 48. So it will be 48. I'll take it. And in the other axis, if I want to see that minus 6 dB line, I think I need to make it smaller. Will the magic number be 48 again? It will not be. Will it be 40? Just want that minus 6 dB line to be there. It would be more like 30. We are getting there. 25 will do. 23 will do. 23 is too much. 24. 24 is the number, of course. Oh, but then it is on top of the other one. And there is only so much space on this window. So, you know what? 24 will be the default. Oh, at least there is a relationship between these two numbers. Great. And we'll go from 48 to 96. Hang on, that's also a multiple. No, it's not. It is 48 times 2, that's 96. So it is a multiple. And here we'll go from 24 to 48. And the whole thing will not really work well if you just put it on the TCP, will it? Kind of does work. But the other thing I was thinking is, by default, the grid is off. Because I don't love the way it looks. Right, okay. It is what it is. So let's give this another look on the MCP. This is the default. It makes sense that it's not registering too loud because this is for voice. But you can always turn on the square root. And perhaps even this week on Thursday, we'll get to Zoom. When we get there, perhaps we will be able to click and drag to zoom in. Could be nice. Yeah, okay, I'll take it. It's not perfect, but it's the best we can do on that little window. Then adjust the grid size. I think we did that. I'll do this one and then we'll wrap up. This will be the last one for today. Let's get to this. So right now, this is working like this. Let's put this on the track. The waveform is being drawn, and if I bypass the effect, it stops. And if I restart the effect, it will just pretend that the time when it was bypassed didn't exist. That's not how I want this to behave. I want this to, as soon as you hit bypass, it stops drawing. So we'll go to the drawing function and we'll check. I think it's called sample running. Yep. So if the sample section is running, then do everything. Otherwise, don't do anything. Let's see what that looks like now. So it is working as usual because the effect is on, and when we bypass, it doesn't draw. And when we stop bypassing, then it's drawing, but it's pretending that the time didn't pass. So one part of the deal is to stop drawing like this. The other part of the deal is to reset. And we do have something for this, but I forget what it is. It is the GFX reset. No, it's not. This is going to be more interesting than I was expecting. Okay, so there are two things that I want to happen. The first is when you hit bypass, I don't want to be drawing anymore. Perhaps I could be drawing but grayed out. But I guess it makes sense to not draw anymore. To just stop drawing. Okay, so if the effect is bypassed, we are not drawing anymore. Great. The second effect that I want to happen is when you bring it back, I don't want it to have some old junk laying around. So I want to erase the circular buffer. When do I do this? I can do this on the GFX block. So that's option number one. I can come here as the else block. So if the effect is running, I can just come here and memset and erase the circular buffer. But I think it makes more sense for the sample block to detect that it has been bypassed and it's just waking up, and then reset the circular buffer there. This will mean that we are resetting the circular buffer in a single place, and it is the responsibility of the sample block to push samples into the data structure. So it should be the responsibility of the sample block to erase itself as well. And we do have a similar notion for the GFX block. We can tell whether the GFX block has just been reset. But we currently don't have a way of saying if the sample block has just been reset. In other words, if we are just waking up from having been bypassed. That's just not a concept. Not yet, anyway. So that's why I'm saying that it will get more interesting, because we will need to come up with a way of knowing that we have been bypassed and we are just waking up, so we can reset the circular buffer. And that's what's coming up next on Thursday. But tomorrow we will have a meeting of the C++ Digital Signal Processing JUICE study group. We'll be looking at both filter, and I will just leave here a note to reset the circular buffer when the sample block is waking up from having been bypassed. Because I will not remember. I will not remember this. Question mark. YouTube is blocking my comments. And Bo is asking me if I checked learn CPP. Yeah, perhaps YouTube is blocking your comments because you included a link to learn CPP. I think that YouTube by default blocks links, and there is a setting for me to allow list people who can post links on the chat. But I haven't touched that setting, so no one but me is allowed to post links over here, I think. And that's probably for spam prevention. And I don't know about this website, no. And I remember you saying that it was using C++11 and asking if that's a problem. If it's using C++11, then probably yes, it is a problem. There are at least 2 versions. I think that there are 3 newer versions of C++, 3 updates to the standard, and perhaps there will be some like appendix with newer stuff, but you probably want to use stuff that is up to date. So yeah, introduction to the newer standards. And I was right, after C++11, there has been 3 updates so far. And it is an appendix. So there is a chance that you will learn stuff the old way and then have to forget and relearn when you get to the appendix. I would prefer if you were following, I think it would be better for you if you were following something that is using the newer standards throughout. And I don't know this website, so I don't know how good it is. There is a lot of good stuff about C++. There is a lot of bad stuff about C++. It is a popular language, so it comes with its own baggage, right? There is the CPP reference, and this one is not so much to learn, it's more a reference. But this one seems to be good because it's cited in the book that I'm reading, the Tour of C++ book, a book that has been written by the creator of the language. So if the creator of the language is endorsing this website, it's probably a good one. But to be fair, I haven't been around this one a whole lot. So I don't know how good it is. And it's definitely not for learning. It's more for like, I know that I need that formatting function. Can I see where it is? Yeah, sure, it will be in here somewhere. So yeah, it is what it is. All right, thank you, Bo, Fotis, and Theo for joining me on the chat. Thank you everyone else who is watching this and not on the chat. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon, PayPal, Bitcoin, all that good stuff. And I liked that it was splitting segments for learning. Yeah, that is a good thing. Perhaps it is a good website. I'm not saying anything about Learn CPP. I don't know that website. I do recommend books though. There are great books on C++. Yeah, and I see you all tomorrow for the meeting of the C++ study group. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you for watching the stream, you know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.